Hey, family, what's up? What's up? What's going on? Come on in here. I know a lot of people right now. I know the entire community is spread thin right now because it's a lot of lives going on. I did not plan to do this one, but I kind of did. I was going to actually do this early. So let me get straight to the point. So for those that can make it over here, I understand that Dante has a live, Rashonda has a live. I think Pastor Kelly has a live. Then I just hopped up and had a live. I know y'all just like for real. Y'all gonna do this to us seriously. Y'all gonna all have lives all at one time. That's fine though. But with that being said, I had a conversation, interesting conversation with if you know Gardis or Father G. Um, Me and him came up together in Beran on Beran TV. Well, Father G actually is a resident of Illinois, and he brought some very interesting information. And you remember when I told y'all with that we can watch the video, but let's kind of look into it. And after I talked to Gardis, yeah, we need to really talk. So I'll bring Gardis on. Let me. Hello, Gardis. How are you?
I'm doing good, Sister E. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. Good, good, good. So let's get straight to the point. So, you said you saw the video where they're considering this new law called safety. I think it's called
Mm,
safety law.
yeah, the Illinois Safety Act.
Yeah, safety act. That due to the act, 400 criminals are going to be released January 1st. And how TikTok has now created this whole I don't want to say propaganda, but they are doing this whole thing where it's kind of like a scare tactic to say 400 prisoners are going to be released. We're going into a purge and all that. It was very interesting when I saw it and I brought it to everybody's attention. But I said, let me find somebody. Actually, I was going to try to find my cousin from Chicago and talk to her to find out what's going on. And I actually texted her, well, my god sister. She has not responded. So I'm glad you will respond. You responded. So tell us a little back history of what's going on. And I'm gonna sit quiet and let you talk.
Okay, so what's happening is about 2 years ago, this is in 2020, the Illinois General Assembly did a criminal justice reform called the Safety Act. And what it is that there's a lot of reforms in the criminal justice system. So one of the major components that has been caused by one of the major I guess distresses that many of the Republican outlets have been sounding the alarm on is the end of cash bail. So what it is that cash bail basically is basically if somebody is charged with a crime, right? A judge has discretion to release them if they are able to pay bail. So everybody sees courtroom drama. A judge can set bail. However, a judge there are certain crimes like murder and armed robbery and arson and different crimes that could the person could either be a risk of flight or risk to other people. They cannot be set bail. So generally what happens is that what you have is if somebody is in a what they call a pretrial detainee waiting for trial, they can get out if they pay bail. Well, what's happening in Illinois is that they find that 90% of Illinois detainees are basically pre-trial detainees, which is they're either awaiting for trial, and about half of them are bail eligible, but they cannot pay. So when we're talking about bail eligible detainees, these are people who are charged with low level crimes like theft, nonviolent crimes, petty theft, basically stuff like that. And a judge somewhere has ruled that, you know, they're not a danger to the society, nor they're a risk of flight. But unfortunately, half of these people cannot pay bail. So, and then also too, um, many of the New York residents would know about the Khalif Browder story, where there was a young man a couple of years ago named Khalif Browder who was charged with stealing a book bag, I think. And my apologies if I, you know, kind of mess up the story. But what I remember is uh, he got he got charged with theft, and the judge set his bail to $3,000. Well, unfortunately, his family could not pay, so he stayed in Rikers Island for 3 years.
Is that the one they kept putting in solitary confinement?
Yes, they put him in solitary
Yeah.
confinement as well. So then, when his case finally came up, they threw the case out because of lack of evidence. So he spent 3 years in Rikers Island for a crime he said he didn't commit, and then they ruled finally after 3 years that, you know, he wasn't even supposed to be in jail. So he gets out of jail and he commits suicide because of
Yeah.
the trauma that he experienced in Rikers Island.
Yep. I
And
remember that.
yeah, so basically, this has been a conversation that has been going on for years about eliminating cash bail because um, Khalif Browder shouldn't have been in jail anyway for 3 years just because he couldn't pay bail. So Illinois has stepped up to, you know, to just get rid of that, and it now is up to the discretion of the judges and the prosecutors if the criminal or the person who's being charged with the crime is not going to be a flight risk nor a danger to the society. Now, what this basically means is that it means that they're not going to release criminals on January 1st, 2023. Anybody who has been convicted of a crime, and when I mean convicted, I mean in front of a jury or a judge, and they ruled that this person is guilty of a crime, you have to serve your sentence. So they are not releasing people who are been convicted. Now, we got to get the language right. Being charged with a crime means that there was substantial evidence to say that you had committed this crime, but you are going to have to stand trial for it. Now, being convicted of a crime is when a jury or a judge rules that by the evidence that has been presented, you have been convicted of the crime. So people who have been convicted of crimes will not be released. Let's get that straight. Now, people who are charged with criminal acts that are eligible for what they call, because in the act they're replacing bail with what they call pre-trial release. If you are eligible for pre-trial release, you are able to be released from jail and await your trial. Now, this is only for people, and I want to get this clear because many people are quoting their opinions on this whole ruling, but many people are not quoting directly from the act. So, as outlined in the act, anybody who is, where is it at? Anybody who has been convicted of a forcible felony, which is under section 1110-6.1, are ineligible for pretrial release. Now, what is forcible felonies? Forcible felonies are treason, first-degree murder, second-degree murder, predatory criminal, sexual assault of a child, aggravated criminal sexual assault, criminal sexual act, robbery, burglary, residential burglary, aggravated arson, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated battery resulting in great bodily harm or permanent disability or disfigurement, and any other felony which involves the use and threat of physical force or violence against any individual. That is in the act. So if you have been even charged with any of these crimes, you will not be eligible for pretrial release. Let's get that straight.
Great.
This is in the act. So The dog whistles that the Republicans are telling people, not only here but across the country, because I'm hearing a lot of people from other parts of the country calling me like, "Hey, Gardens, what's going on? They about to release all the criminals on January 1st?" No, they're not, because for people, like I said, low-level criminals like marijuana possession, petty theft. Those are the ones that are basically up for examination for pretrial release, and that is still up to the discretion of a judge and the prosecutor, and the judge still can rule that even if you do commit these low non-violent crimes, you still can be denied pretrial release. So
Wow.
for me, this really doesn't change much, except for the fact that now if you don't have it eliminates the fact that if you don't have money to be released off of a low or non-violent crime, then the judge could still release you. But the hype and hysteria of releasing criminals, the hype and hysteria of just everybody just running wild, being the Purge and all this other kind of crazy stuff. Now, people who watch the Purge, I've watched the Purge. That's a whole different thing, because if people remember what the Purge movies was about, was the government had ruled one night where all crime was legal, with the exception of using bombs and basically attacking government officials up until I think it was the third movie that they said that government officials were were targets then. But no, that's totally different. That is just totally different. So this language of the Purge is absolutely absurd. And I think what is getting to the craws of a lot of Republicans is that in this act, it is making law enforcement more accountable for their actions. So part of what's going on in the act is that law enforcement now has to be certified, and any actions that are taking, any of the actions that result in fatalities, they're starting to be they're going to be held accountable for it now. So I think this is why many of our Republican friends are so upset about this. But what's so interesting is a group of law enforcement people here in Illinois helped put this bill together.
Wow. Wow.
So yeah, it's a crazy false hysteria that's going on. Like I said, with the Republicans, there's this guy that's running for governor here, Darren Bailey. He's a MAGA Republican. He's a staunch Trump supporter, and he was the one that kind of put all of this in motion, of sending these dog whistles about freeing criminals under this Safety Act that Illinois has already passed. And he claims that if he's elected governor in November, that he's going to repeal it. No, you can't repeal it, because it's already been passed by the Illinois Assembly. It's just like if Congress passes a bill, nobody can repeal it. It's a law when it's passed by the legislation. So he can't repeal it. So it's trust me when I say it's not what people think it is.
Wow. That's interesting. So ultimately what I'm getting for you, and I'm gonna run it back through, we're just dropping everything. This is more of a propaganda or a campaign to put people in fear, ultimately driven by the Republican Party,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not in agreement with this bill. which will cause the police officers to be held accountable for their actions
Mm-hmm.
if they mistreat citizens. Also, anyone that is in jail for any type of petty crimes that cannot afford bail, but the sentence, the crime doesn't fit jail time, they're pretty much not going to have to pay that cash bond and can go home. So that means situations like if you get, great example, speeding, and they arrest, I don't know if they do that in Chicago, but if you get caught speeding or DUI, will they get released?
Well, DUI, I think possibly. Now, here's the thing, because there's a difference between DUI and there's a difference between a DUI when you hit somebody and
Uh-huh.
kill, because that's basically vehicular homicide,
Yeah.
and that's and I don't think that falls under the pretrial detainee act. Now, DUI, I think, does.
Okay.
However, I'm sure if a judge, because like I said, and I preference this, it's still up to the discretion of the judge. So if the judge sees that you have multiple DUIs, he might say, or she might say, no, we're not going to do this. What this also does is that it puts more pressure on judges now. So now judges have to make these decisions about whether they can release a person pre-trial, pre-trial, give a person a pre-trial release, depending on, like I said, what the crime is, and I just listed to you a bunch of crimes that are not eligible for pre-trial release. Now, if like I said, if it's petty theft or something like that, the judge still has discretion. That's important because now judges will be scrutinized for, let's just say they release somebody who was charged with petty crime, and then this person goes out and say kills somebody. Well, now the judge is up for scrutiny because of the fact that he released this guy, even though the guy was only being charged with with petty crime, but then he goes out and commits a more serious crime. Then that's on the judge's record and the prosecution's as well. So yeah, this puts more accountability not just on police, but also the judicial system and the judges as well. So I'm waiting to see when the first person a judge gives pretrial release to, and then he or she goes out and commits another crime. I'm willing to bet you somebody's gonna come out from the Republican Party saying, "Look, see, it's not working. It's not working."
I'm concerned though. Do you think it'll be mass hysteria or hysteria in the Illinois areas when inmates are released?
Well, here's the thing, because when I think of inmates, I'm thinking of people who, like I said, have been through their due process and they have been charged with a crime. I mean,
Okay.
they have been convicted. Like I said, judge rules or jury rules that you committed this crime. This is basically an inmate, because you have to serve a sentence.
When
You
yeah,
have, yeah, you have to serve a sentence. So if you get convicted of battery, by a jury, then yeah, you got to serve your 10, 15, 20-year sentence. And there's no way around that. But when I think of detainees who are waiting for trial for petty crimes, those are basically prisoners.
so detainees, do you think if those detainees are released, if they, so what is this 400? Explain to me what are this 400 number that they keep talking about? Just tell us, walk us through that, because that's all I'm hearing is 400 prisoners are going to be released. And from your standpoint, these aren't prisoners; these are detainees, those who have done petty crimes, and they're getting released.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, that video that you basically showed was from I guess he was talking about the Winnebago County in Illinois.
Uh huh.
Now, Winnebago County is, I think Winnebago County is like about, I'm willing to say like about 60 miles from Chicago, and it's in like it's like in the utmost northern part of Illinois. That's where Rockford, Illinois, is at. Now, Rockford has Rockford actually has a heavy a heavy black population there. Outside of Chicago, Rockford probably has the most black people. Oh, in East St. Louis too, has the most black people in Illinois as far as the city. And I guess the hysteria is focused on Winnebago County because of the fact that it does hold a lot of black detainees there, and a lot of these detainees are people who can't pay child support because you can get
Mm.
locked up for that. Like I said, petty crimes, low level marijuana drug possession charges or whatever, from stemming from when they before they passed the marijuana law like 4 years ago. So there's people still locked up for that, and they're just basically waiting for a trial. Now, like I said, all those people who are convicted of the crimes that were I'm not convicted. All those people who are charged under the 110-6.1 Act that's in there, like I was saying, arson, murder, second degree murder, third degree murder, all that, you are not eligible for pretrial release.
Okay. So those 400 are pretty much out of that particular area.
Well, according to the video, that's what he was basically kind of talking about.
Okay. Okay. So ultimately, this is pretty much, and that's what I'm just hoping that January 1st is as quiet as possible, because after January 6th, it's like
Well,
it's like the Republicans are doing anything possible to get back into office, and really that's all they got to do is wait it out with what's going on now.
yeah, well, and here's the thing, because I worry about it because of the fact that how there's just certain groups of people that try to bring an apocalypse to
Yes,
you. And this is more of a worry than anything, because I think what's going to happen is they're going to try to force people, or they're going to try to initiate a lot of this violence.
that's what I
Within
was
the,
asking about. Yeah,
so it ain't going to be the criminals, or not. I wouldn't say the criminals. It ain't going to be the detainees that are in. It's going to be some of these Proud Boy white supremacist people who are going to be out here shooting folks, if you ask me.
that is my question. That was
So
my concern. What this propaganda is going to do, which is going to lead for them to act. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about another. Try to have a well. No, I don't see them. The thing is about this day and age, it's kind of hard to pull off a Rosewood or a Tulsa. Um,
well, I disagree. I mean, they almost pulled it off on January 6th 2 years ago
What
with
about it with
Kaplan.
just the black folks? So I ain't talking about them. They gonna fight. They ready to fight each other. But I'm just talking about going in, because what I didn't like is this. They made black people the picture of what's going on right now, with the Black Caucus being out there, with a lot of the black politicians being involved in the conversation. And I'm like, wait, hold on. It ain't just black folks in jail. Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
But they make us the face of it, which ultimately makes us a target.
Well. Here's the thing, because even though black folks only occupy 15% of the Illinois population, as far as the prison population, black folks is 70%
Ooh.
of the prison population here in Illinois. Now, think about that. 15% of the total Illinois population, but we are 70% of the prison population.
Wow.
What's wrong with this number here?
Wow.
Exactly.
I'm just gonna wait for January 1st to see what's gonna happen, because
Well, I mean, for us, we don't even have to wait for January 1st because election time is coming around November, and the governor's races is is going to be in November. And like I said, there's a MAGA Republican who is running
Oh,
it against JB Pritzker, current who is the current governor of Illinois. Now, here's my thing because um, I'm no fan of the Democrats. Trust me when I say this.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
if Darren Bailey becomes the governor of Illinois, black folks may consider moving out of Illinois.
He that bad?
He is a MAGA Republican.
Mm.
He's a MAGA Republican.
Oh, how do you question? And I don't want to change the topic, but it actually isn't. As we get closer to the presidential race, what do you feel as if the climate is going to be? How do you? I feel it's going to be thick, especially after January 6th. It's going to be a tense and a time for us to be very mindful of our surroundings. I'll say that much.
It's going to be very, very thick. I
Yes.
mean, I would say expect more violent outbursts. Um, expect a lot of hmm. I would probably say expect a lot of law enforcement out on election day than you
Mm,
would normally see,
yep.
because many areas are anticipating it, and what we're going to see is a mix of what happened in 2020 along with what happened 20 years ago in Florida. I don't know if you remember what had happened in Florida, which actually Bush Jr. had won the election because I remember watching the documentary. I don't know if it was one of Michael Moore's documentaries, where people at the polling places in Florida was getting literally threatened physically. I mean, they were getting threatened physically uh, because who was Bush's opponent at that time? It was oh man, I forgot his name. But there were a lot of people going to vote for him, and and not enough votes for Bush, and they had people literally out there physically threatening voters. And
Wow.
actually, it was the first time I've seen that before. And since that time in 2000, it has gotten extremely worse.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
in those areas where Republicans are heavy, like in Texas, that's concern for people.
Yeah.
I know we don't concern over that here because we're in a Democratic stronghold in Chicago and in the Cook County area of Illinois, but I feel sorry for Black folks who live in the southern part of Illinois and other parts of Illinois, because despite the fact that you see that Illinois is blue only because of Cook County, the rest of Illinois is straight red. Once you get south of Will County, which is the next county over from Cook County, going south, that is straight Trump country.
Wow.
Yeah, everything else is straight Trump country. So, yeah.
Yeah. Most of the time, though, your bigger metropolitan cities are most of the time I've seen are Democrats, like Democratic areas, like Chicago. Um, is it has that. Memphis is the same way. Um, those bigger cities, metropolitan cities, you'll see that a little bit more. But that's going to be interesting to see because as we get closer and closer and closer, um, it's going to be. I'm starting to watch the news a little bit more. Put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention everybody's already frustrated, period, because of inflation. Inflation is wearing people out. The cost of food is ridiculous. The cost of gas. So everybody's already tense and sitting on pins and needles because it's getting to the point you can't afford to buy groceries anymore. I went to the grocery store a couple of days ago and just bought four things, and my bill ended up being no three things, and the three or four things. These wasn't big items, and it still ended up being almost $16. I said I don't have $16 worth of stuff in my bag, but the cost of living is getting ridiculous. So I just wonder what the environment is going to be like in the next year or so, just as we lead closer and closer and closer to the election. Because one, you already got these different areas that are kind of reshaping voter laws where you're required to have all this documentation. You can't do this, you can't do that. People are already tense off of that, so it's almost like I wonder what it's going to look like.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, and I think the attention of the global news is starting to wane in
Yeah,
regards to what's going on outside of the U.S. And I think a lot of what's going on outside of the U.S. Is impacting, well, it's definitely impacting,
the U.S.
what's going on here in the United States, and people have to pay attention on situations like the Ukraine incident, what's going on in China, because what we're starting to see, and I know people have used this term a lot. What we're starting to see is a new world order, and this new world order is not the typical conspiracy theorist Alex Jones type of um, um, you know um, lizard men taking over the world type of thing, or the Vatican, putting everybody under one religion rule or one government rule. What we're starting to see is um, you're starting to see the economy shift away from the United States over to China. And many global economists have agreed that China in the next year or so is going to be the economic power, if it's not already the economic power.
Yep.
Because if you look at the number of bonds that they own from the United States, it's in the trillions. So China has $1 trillion worth of our debt that we have to pay them. And also with this situation with Russia and Ukraine, it's putting a strain on the economy because, for one, so far the Biden administration has sent, I believe it's 15 billion to the Ukraine, and they're putting a package to send like 3 billion more
And they can't,
to,
and
to
they
to
can't
that
get,
place.
they can't give
So
us reparation.
yeah, so they're siphoning off all this money to a war that they're never going to win, and the weapons, whatever weapons that they're using over there, they're going to stay over there. So it's not helping us economically because, for one, because of the fact that Russia has cut off gas to the European nations, uh, we have been pressured to supply them with gas, which is why gas prices are going up because we're
Mm.
giving Europe our gas. Oil
Wow.
prices are going up because, for one, a lot of the oil countries, who we told not to do business with Russia, they're like, well, you know what, our economy's got to stay stable, so we don't really care what you say. And many of these countries are giving the United States the big bird, and then not from Sesame Street, but the middle finger. Like, no, we're still gonna do. We're still the case. The case I'm thinking about is India. So a couple of months ago, when the United States had put these sanctions on Russia, India was still buying their oil from Russia because that's their biggest oil supplier. And Anthony Blinken, Secretary of State, was castigating, the president of India or the prime minister in India for doing it. And he's like, wait a minute, we trying to survive here. we can't hold up to these sanctions because we need oil, we need energy. And they basically, like I said, they gave the United States the big middle finger. And then this wasn't even it. They traded oils because the national oil, the global oil standard is traded in dollars, U.S. dollars. They went so far as to trade their oil prices in their own currency, which is the rupees.
Oh,
Yeah, so they was like, you know what? We're even gonna buy this oil with our own money. They didn't even use U.S. money, which is like the national oil standard currency.
wow.
So these countries are now aligning with Russia and China because now that this whole situation has happened in the Ukraine and this tension boiling up in Taiwan, this is bringing these two countries closer together. And both of them are already superpowers in the world. And it is probably because of the United States that these two countries are superpowers. If people remember history, China was on the verge of economic collapse back in the early 70s until Nixon made a deal with them to trade, to trade with China because it's a communist country. And so with this, they basically gave them, they basically gave them the sweatshops to produce American products. This is when you started seeing American products being built outside of the United States in large manner. So China basically took that. Now it basically, like I said, it basically took time, but in that process, they have become the next superpower.
Yep.
Russia was on the verge of collapse and bankruptcy when the Soviet Union fell. However, after years of isolation and trying to, and in producing more oil 20 years ago, now they have rose to a superpower again. So, yeah, I mean, for me, the United States is now in a quandary because since the fall of the Soviet Union, they have been the sole superpower in the world. But now, the last couple of years, they had to share the titles with these two countries, which are basically coming together because of the fact that they are aggressively, trying to sanction Russia, trying to turn business away from China now, which is too late because most of the global markets are already making deals with China.
Correct. And then,
So
and then you got India who's saying that they are still going to buy oil from Russia. And guess what? A lot of your work is done with India as well.
exactly. And what's also interesting is Russia and China, since the early 20th centuries, they were enemies. But because of the fact that the United States has been putting their hands in a lot of things, they have drawn those two countries closer together than ever in their history.
Yep. And my question is this: I wonder will other countries start teaming up with them? Because not only is Russia and China pissed off, you got other countries that are just the smaller countries that are sitting back saying, you know what? U.S. has took us through the ringer as well. We're going to align with you. If these other countries start aligning with them, this won't be good. But I
Well,
said this a long time ago too. The one country that if they ever truly align with them, I think it's going to be a problem for us, and that's if Africa decides to get in the fight.
well, have you heard of the BRICS nations?
Oh, what's that?
Oh, so BRICS it's an acronym. It's BRICS. It's Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa.
Oh,
They are the five emerging economies that formed in 20, I think it's 28 2010. 2010. They formed this alliance like 12 years ago, or maybe even sooner than that. But what they were doing was they were trying to combine their economy, basically have an economic alliance with each other. So at first, it seemed like it was kind of like, well, let them go ahead and put their money together. It wasn't as big as what the United States had.
Yeah.
But now that they see that China, Russia, and India have grown into this huge economy, the BRICS alliance has been a concern for the United States because, for one, the three nations that's in the middle of that acronym are growing as far as an economy. Basically, China is right behind the United States, and behind China is India, and then is Russia.
Yep.
So they have seen this alliance become very successful, and many nations who have a beef against the United States, which includes Russia and China, and now India is starting to have some economic turmoils with the United States. South Africa, it's a South Africa, which was the last country to be added on to this. It's still kind of alive with the United States, but when Blinken went down to South Africa to kind of get the support of the African nations, they were like, "Yeah, no, we're not going with y'all on this." I think it's starting to turn a little towards the east when you look at who South Africa is allied with. And they've also said, I think in the Wall Street Journal had mentioned this, is that the BRICS alliance has gotten more applications from other countries than ever before.
Oh.
Yes, there are people who are looking to sign up to get in on this alliance.
Oh my God.
And,
Yeah.
and the ultimate goal of this alliance is to have their own currency. Now, you remember, well, I don't know, but somebody in the audience might remember last time there were people who tried to start their own currency without the blessings of the United States. One, Saddam Hussein, who people tend to leave out that Saddam Hussein, whether you like him or not, he tried to start his own currency because he tried to pull away the OPEC trading currency from the U.S. dollar to a separate dollar, and you saw what happened to him. And then you had the case of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, who basically tried to start an African currency, and you saw what happened to him in 2011. But this is different because you got Russia and China involved in this. And I don't care what you do, you're going to have to go full-blown war with them to get to stop them from doing this.
Yeah.
and I think at the position that the United States has right now, I don't think it's wise to go to war with either of those nations because, for one, they're both nuclear nations,
Including India
and India too. Yep. They're all nuclear nations, and I don't care what anybody says. Nobody wins a nuclear war.
Yes.
Nobody wins a nuclear war.
Yep.
Now, it'll be different if it was, we started a nuclear war with the Dominican Republic because they don't have no nukes. Yeah, that's easy. But China and Russia has more nuclear bombs than the United States.
Wow. And see, that's that whole thing. If they make this alliance, and you just brought up South Africa, and this alliance grows, U.S. is going to start getting scared, and they're going to start reacting. And that's the biggest thing, because I will say this much: we're very reactive rather than proactive. Great example is Vietnam. They ran over there to Vietnam, and then guess what? They went into that territory thinking they were going to win a war. And ultimately, they did not win the Vietnam War.
No, they didn't. They didn't even win the Korean War.
So, not at all.
And that was a war they could have won, but just like the United States now, they get greedy,
Yep.
and they try to have hegemony over the globe, or try to keep it, because what we're seeing right now across the world is the United States is losing power,
Yep.
influence. They're
Yep.
losing that influence. They're losing power because you know this Ukraine thing that's going on right now and trying to get Putin out of office. You're not going to do it without going to full blown war with
Yep.
Russia.
Yep.
The oligarchs, because many people are I guess the strategy was they were going to try to get the oligarchs to throw Putin out of there. Putin has too much power in Russia for him to be overthrown. You're not going to do that. You couldn't get Castro overthrown in Cuba. What makes you think that's going to happen in Russia? You're going to have to physically
Yep.
remove him out of office, and I dare you to go over to Russia and try
I
to.
think they scared. I know they scared. That's why they trying their best to stay out of it.
Yeah,
Oh, they
like I said, I dare you to go over to Russia and invade them and try to. You saw what the last two powerful nations in history tried to do. You saw Germany tried to invade Russia in World War II. They got stopped. Before then, France, who was the global power during that time, and that was Napoleon Bonaparte, he tried to invade Russia and that failed. So I dare you go over there trying to invade Russia and try to get Putin out of it.
Man, that's gonna be, and then not to mention Russia, you got China. So if you come at Russia, I got a feeling China is, even though China's trying to remain neutral, I don't think they're neutral.
No, they're not. But
They're opportunists.
we are antagonizing them to
Yes.
side over, and this actually stems from the Trump regime, when Trump in 2017 tried to start a trade war with China. And how are you going to do that when they own all of our debt? We manufacture, I mean, not we, but they manufacture like 80% of the goods and products that come into this country. Like I'm pretty sure your audience could look on the back of their shirts, and a lot of them said "Made in China."
Correct.
I'm pretty sure I can see that in the back of my shirt, "Made in China." So how do you start a trade war with a country that basically owns you economically?
Correct.
And ever since then, this tension between the United States and China has been ratcheted up, because even in my profession of technology, you know, we talk about this whole microprocessor chip shortage that's happening. Well, many of the chips that is made around the world is actually either made in Taiwan or China, and that's a problem because of the fact that now that these tariffs have been ramped up, it's hard to get laptops and
Yep.
computers and cars with computers. It's hard to manufacture those things now, and it's even worse now, because the district that I work for, we trying to order we try to order like a couple of thousand laptops for our students, and and those have been back ordered for like like 3 or 4 months.
Wow.
Whereas 5 years ago we could have got 1,000 computers in a week.
Man, you know what's so funny is I have a an Apple laptop. I got
Mm-hmm.
a MacBook Pro, and I lost my charger, and that's the little brick and the actual charging cord. So me, who being me, I'm already mad that I done lost my cord, but I got to get one because I'm down to one, and me and my daughter sharing it. So I go to the Apple store. Uh, and when I walked into the Apple store, and this was about a couple, and this is in New York, about a couple of months, about a couple months ago, was I in Brooklyn? I can't remember if it was Brooklyn or if it was, no. It was in Manhattan. So I
Mm-hmm.
and went in there and said, hey, I need, I walk up to I guess the person in the Apple store, and, they got their little iPads, and they take your information and say, you're here for, and I'm like, I'm here. I need to buy a charger for my laptop. They had a look on their face like, Ain't nothing we can do. And the woman was like, we're out of chargers. I said, what? She said, we won't have, it was like in April. They did not, or May. It had been like, it had to been May because
Mm-hmm.
I had moved here. She said, we're not going to have any more chargers until July. And it was the beginning of June.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, she said, it's just a shortage right now.
Yeah, Apple manufactures a lot of their products in China.
Mhm.
They have, like that company has trillions of dollars invested in China. Not to mention Starbucks, not to mention Intel. They have businesses in China. So what happens if this country sanctions China? Are all those businesses going to leave?
Correct. Correct. That's why I'm just kind of, it's so much stuff going on just domestically and on the domestic side and in from an international perspective. It's a lot going on between Ukraine, Putin, China, then not to mention Nancy Pelosi, where she went to Taiwan and pissed China off.
Yeah. So all of this stuff that we're going that is directly affecting us, it's basically a microcosm of what's happening outside of the United States.
Yep, it's just like a powder. It's just like it's growing. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's like we don't. And the crazy thing is because we don't really feel it. I feel like it's we don't feel it. Feel it. We feel it like within the economy, but we don't feel it. And it's like on not on mainstream media or news of all the stuff that's going on. I got a feeling like how you try to hide and say it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better, like a cut. It may hurt you a little bit, but you like, oh, it's gonna get better. It's gonna, and if you don't take care of it, it gets worse and worse and worse and worse to the point that they may have to amputate your finger. to the And I feel like everything that's going on right now is gonna become so bad that it's gonna be an extreme situation that happens, and it's gonna be the result of all these other things that's going on.
Yeah,
Like, mhm,
and I think and see many many white people um, have have this thought that they're losing their country because of the fact that you know the Census Bureau had already predicted a couple of years ago that by 2040 or something like that, that this country is going to be predominantly non-white, and white people will be the minority
mm,
because of the fact that um, their birth rates are low.
yep,
Their birth rates are low. Nobody's having babies here,
yep,
and when you think about the continent and the country that actually has the highest birth rate is Africa.
mm,
is Africa, and in particular Nigeria. Now, here's an interesting conversation that I had when I was in New Orleans for the summer. I was talking to a Nigerian priest about families and how they view families. And one of the things he said to me was very, it struck me, it was very, it struck me, and it made a lot of connections because you know he was saying that because he grew up in Nigeria. He said that in Nigeria, children are looked at as an investment, not necessarily monetary investment, but more of a like a legacy spiritual investment.
mhm.
And he says, I notice in this country that children are looked at as a cost. And I thought about that. I was like, wow. So now that he said that, I'm like, so is this why a lot of us don't have children? Because we look at them as a cost? So I thought that was interesting. And is this the reason why Nigeria has the highest birth rates in all of the planet? Because they look at their children differently than what we look at our children.
Yep, yep. They look at them as if they're Here is taught, go to college, kids are a burden, And each generation is getting worse and worse. So the culture is, that's why I really believe, because they know their birth numbers are low. Now all of a sudden they fighting to end abortion.
Yeah, but they, basically that's just not to abort, white babies, but
Pretty much. That's it.
that's what that is. I really don't see them shutting down a lot of the Planned Parenthoods in the black community, but you know they'll go try to shut them down in the white communities in a minute. But then you got people out here who are encouraging uh, 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 black babies being aborted. You know, I won't name no names, but I remember somebody had said that, and I was like, wow, that sounds like some Margaret Singer type of. That's a Margaret Singer type of tone right there.
Correct. Correct. So I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
This is gonna be interesting. I want to do more of these conversations because this is gonna be interesting. This the news. The more I look at it, when I do watch it, it's like they're trying to play as if everything is all right, but it's not.
And you know what, sister? Yeah, I thought about this too when I was watching your video yesterday because and don't get me wrong, I don't blame you for for being alarmed because when a lot of people who I know outside of Chicago saw that, they were like, wow, what's going on in Chicago? But people looked at the interpretation, how people interpreted that.
Mm-hmm.
And those people who reported that, none of them have directly quoted from the act itself.
You told me that. Yep.
But think about this. Think about this because how many times that happens when we talk about scripture in the Bible?
Yep.
Because because many people go off the interpretation of what their pastor, their priest, their preacher, or whoever's interpreting it says, and it's like nobody really does a close reading and look at the scriptures themselves and like, wait a minute, this is not what that is saying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like the same thing.
Yep. Yep. And that's why I told everybody. I said I'm gonna do some more research. I said, but this is alarming if this is really about to happen. And when you called me, I was more at peace when you called me because I have a bunch of relatives, and then I thought about you. I was like, all these people I know are in Chicago. I hope they are right. And when you text me and you said, no, that ain't what it is. And I'm like, cool. So I wasn't, no, I'm good. That's why I kept saying, y'all, let's do our research and come together to make sure this isn't what it is. Um, so no, I'm good on that. But it would be
Somebody
interesting. Uh-huh.
somebody asking a question: with the children looked at as an investment, did the Nigerian priest describe the household structure as well? Um, from my understanding, I mean, it's just the basic household structure of a mother, father, and children.
I
Um,
think they're leaning more towards more than one spouse, more than one wife.
oh, okay. Well, yeah, I don't know about that. I know there are certain cultures in Nigeria that still practice polygamy, but it's typically the government um, uh, does not endorse it. I mean, it's like here in the United States. I think it's still legal in Utah. Polygamy is still illegal in Utah, if I'm not mistaken, because of the Mormons.
You will have a
Uh,
bunch of brews moving into Utah.
yeah, so yeah, I think it's I think it's still I think polygamy is still legal there. But you were also talking about Chicago and Chicago violence. Now, I'm not the one to sidestep that. I mean, yeah, we have our issues here. And people have to understand, like, when we talk about Chicago violence, you have to talk about the history of it and how they report it. So, you know, this thing of Chicago violence has become sensationalized just recently. But growing up on the south side of Chicago, we've experienced violence for like decades, but nobody talked about it in the national news. And I presented statistics about how Chicago had 900 homicide deaths between 1990 and 1995. 900 per year.
Wow.
But nobody talked about it during that time. And I'm stemming on, I think it's two reasons why that is, because at that time you still had the LA gang wars that was still going on, which
Yeah.
people focused their attention on. And
Yep.
secondly, majority of the people who were murdered during that time were basically gangbangers and drug dealers. And so who cares about, black males who have fallen into the system of crime, being murked like that? It's not really a big thing.
Yep.
However, it started to make a turn in 1994 when a young 12-year-old boy named Robert Sanford, called him Yummy. His nickname was Yummy.
I think
Murdered a huh?
I think I heard about Yummy, but go
Yes,
ahead.
it was national news. He accidentally killed this little girl named Siobhan Dean, and it not only became like big city news, but it became national news. And so Yummy had unofficially, when I mean unofficially, I mean back then in the gang culture, you had to get the permission of whoever was the head or the leader to shoot somebody. And this was only because of the fact that, whoever put the order out, they were going to be accountable for it. Well, he didn't get permission from the governor of the BDs, the gang at the time that he was in. He didn't get the permission, so he ended up killing this little girl who actually was the niece of one of the other gang leaders, and uh, she was killed. So he hid out for a couple of weeks, and it was not only a citywide manhunt, but I remember seeing his face on national TV. This is a 12-year-old boy. And all they kept talking about was his long record. I mean, he was in the foster care system. He started committing crimes when he was like 8 years old, 9 years old, or something like that. And he had a long, long record. And so finally, they found Yummy in a Vidox over on 83rd Street, I believe. And he was shot execution style. Basically, the gang that he was with, they couldn't hold him anymore because the cops were after him, the rival gangs was after him, and they just needed to let him go. And the way they let him go is they shot him in the head. And so I remember that his face was on the cover of Time magazine that same year, and basically, they had some headline about him. So this young black boy became the face of violence because Time magazine is a national, global magazine. And and I wouldn't say it was coincidence, but it was basically a planned session where later on that year, 1994, they passed the Bill Clinton crime bill. The Bill Clinton crime bill was passed, so that was no coincidence. But going back to Chicago, um, when I think about what happened back in the early '90s in Chicago, many of the murders that happened during that time were basically targeted murders. So that's why nobody really cared about the 900 plus people a year that were getting killed. But what's happening now, and this is the difference between back then and now, even though the numbers back then were actually more than it is now, is that a lot of the murders now are innocent bystanders because the gangs that are present now, they have no what do they call it, they have no leadership, no code, no nothing. It's basically wild wild west. I don't care who's out there, I'm gonna murk them, whoever, because there's no structure in the gang. And the only reason why that happened was in 1995 the feds came in and they arrested all of the gang leaders off the streets. Okay, that's fine. But what they did was they left the drugs, the guns, and the foot soldiers on the streets. So what happens? The foot soldiers are like, we got guns, we got drugs. Let's take them and do something with it. Now, many of these crews, they were from the same gang, but they all had different agendas. So a neighborhood that used to have 2 gangs now has 10 gangs, all with different agendas. And ever since then, that's when the structure of gangs started to become very reckless.
Yeah.
And you start to see a lot of innocent, murders happening. Now, here's another caveat that people have to take into account when you think about Chicago violence. About I would say about 12 years ago, the clearance rates for Chicago started to hit an all-time low. When I mean clearance rates, this is the statistics that the Chicago Police Department has, where if a murder happens, the way it's closed or cleared is when somebody who is the perpetrator gets locked up, and found and locked up, or they end up dying. Clearance rates in Chicago started to hit below 45%, like 12 years ago. So basically, there's all these people who are getting killed. Nobody's getting arrested. Nobody's being targeted on who are the shooters in these incidents. Now, the national clearance rate is basically 60%. We were below 45. And none of these murders were getting solved. And so you have the Chicago police who, many people think like, well, do they even want to solve this crime? Nobody's getting arrested. Wow. And so they're letting these murderers, loose on the streets for some reason or another. Maybe they're part of it, because one of the things that we always have, it's a running inside joke with a lot of us in Chicago, is that the biggest gang in Chicago is not the BDs, it's not the Gangster Disciples, it's not the Vice Lords, it's not the Four Corner Hustles, it's not the Latin Kings. It is the Chicago Police Department. They are the biggest gang in Chicago. And I will tell you this because I have a family member who worked for the DEA for 20 years. And he worked out in the Chicago office. And he even says that the Chicago police are probably one of the most corrupt police departments in all of America. It is the CPD, who is the biggest gang in Chicago. So yeah, that was a point of interest when the clearance rates started to go down, because before, in the 90s, this is what led up to a lot of the mass incarceration of Black folks, because people were murdering folks and they were getting locked up. Now people getting murdered and nobody's getting locked up.
Yeah, that sounds like Memphis right now too.
Yeah. And one last thing. So the last 2 years has been very interesting because, we've had the pandemic, and then we had the George Floyd incident. And then we had these rise of carjackings that has been happening. And I say rise because I'm explaining in a minute. So 2 years ago, there's been this whole thing about carjackings. What's been happening, and this is why I say reporting is very important. Carjackings have been going up in Chicago, but not on the south and west side where most of the Black people live at. It's the north side and downtown that had the highest rate of carjackings. And now all of a sudden this has been a concern because living on the south and west side of Chicago, we've been worried about carjackings for like decades.
Wow.
But now it's coming to downtown Chicago on the north side. Now all of a sudden, Chicago violence is a concern. And also homicides have been going up in the northern part of Chicago.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
What's near? Give me a landmark in northern Chicago.
So what is in northern Chicago? Wrigley Field.
Okay.
That's in the north side of Chicago.
Okay.
O'Hare is kind of considered, north side of Chicago. But yeah, so now that crimes are happening in white neighborhoods, it's a problem now. And what and we kind of laugh at this with a sadness because of the fact that you know black communities on the south side have been dealing with crime for like decades, but nobody was ever concerned about it. Now all of a sudden it's a concern.
That's the same thing with that Just Say No campaign. Black folks was had issues with drugs throughout their neighborhoods, but then it started filtering over into their neighborhoods and impacting their lives. Then just say no. You remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah. And the only reason why that happened was because when crack hit the black neighborhoods back in the 80s, it was basically just targeted for black folks. But then when white folks started coming into our neighborhoods and buying this stuff and taking it back to their communities, then all of a sudden it was a concern. And next thing you know, here comes Reagan talking about now we got a mandatory sentence for anybody with like a small piece of crack rock. You automatically serve what 5 years or something like that.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah.
Yep. That's the same thing in Memphis. They start um, cutting. They started doing a bunch of stuff in Memphis, sending folks to jail for almost 20 years. And really, it was just like guilt by association, just about. Because you're associated with this particular group and this group did something, everybody goes to jail. You could have been at work. I got a cousin who was at work and something went down. And because he was affiliated with the group, I mean, he had proof that he was at work, but because he was affiliated with the group, he went to jail. And then he spent some years in jail. He spent some years in jail. But I don't mean 5 years. I mean like 20 years almost.
Mm-hmm.
When he went to jail, I was 19. When he got out of jail, I was almost 30. I'll say 36, 37 when he got out of jail.
Yeah, I've had cousins and friends who spent a lot of time in jail, dealing that stuff, and yeah, they spend more time in jail than the big time drug dealers.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, like literally people that was pushing weight, like pushing tons of keys.
Yep. Yep. But I don't want to keep you because I know it's getting late. Do you have
Oh yeah.
anything else? I'm glad that you brought some clarity to what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody can kind of calm down but still stay alert. Because again,
Yes, and so I'm not here to say I'm not here to tell people not to be alert, because you still got to be alert, because we still got mass shootings going on, and that's another thing too. Now we had that mass shooting that happened in Highland Park back in July. And what was so interesting, people were texting me, and I appreciate people checking on me, because it was like,
wait a minute, there was a mass shooting in July. See, that shows I've been disconnected from. I took a break because it was getting depressing. I did not know it was a mass shooting.
oh yeah, yeah. So on the 4th of July, this was on the 4th of July. There's a northern suburb called Highland Park of Chicago. There was a mass shooting that happened. I think maybe 3 or 4 people had died, and it was during a 4th of July parade.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh, I remember that. I
yeah,
remember
yeah,
that.
yeah,
That was more okay. I remember that.
yeah, yeah. So people were texting me like, Curtis, you okay? Your family okay? And the thing was that like Highland Park is like 30 miles from Chicago. And basically Highland Park is the place where Michael Jordan used to live at. So you know what type of money resides out there.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like the reporting because they did include Chicago in it, but it's a far suburb of Chicago where a lot of rich people live at. Like 95% of Highland Park is white.
That's what I saw on the parade, and that's why I was like, wow. But
Yeah,
this is gonna be it's gonna be an interesting. We just recently had something happened in Memphis where this guy was driving around just shooting folk. I think he killed like 4 people.
yeah, and I meant to contact you on that because I was hoping that your family was okay because I know you don't live in Memphis, but I know you got family still out there, right?
Yeah, the neighborhood he they called him finally called him in is in the neighborhood we my mom lives in and I grew up in. It's an area in Memphis called White Haven.
Okay.
And White Haven is like right next to the state line road between Tennessee and Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
So they found him drive. That he was trying to go into Mississippi, but he ended up turning around because Mississippi is much stricter than Tennessee. Mississippi, they would have hung him. So he turned around and he was trying to. I heard that he's trying to make his way out of Mississippi, and they caught him in Whitehaven. And Whitehaven is where I grew up. So
Yeah, they'll catch the black criminals in Mississippi, but they won't give them water.
show won't. They show won't. They still ain't gave them folk water in Jackson.
Yeah, and it's in Jackson.
Yep,
That's the capital, right?
yep. But Jackson is a lot of black folk.
But it's still the
Jackson,
capital
Mississippi.
of It's the capital of Mississippi.
But it's Mississippi first. Let's clarify that. That's Mississippi.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Natchez got clean running water. I'm pretty sure other parts of Mississippi got clean running water.
I'm shocked. If you ever saw Mississippi, well, you know what? Certain parts of Mississippi, but overall, I was looking at poorest states. I think Mississippi is like,
They top three.
yep.
Yeah, they definitely top three. My father was born in Mississippi. He was born in Meridian.
Okay, I've heard of that.
Yeah. So yeah, no, it's very in a sense it is kind of depressing out there.
Depressing. I don't even like going to Mississippi. Period.
I mean the look of it's very depressing.
Looks, the looks speak. It speaks to the state. It is. It's a dark spirit over Mississippi. Mississippi.
Well, I wouldn't say it's a dark spirit. I mean, because I do talk to some folks out there, and I say this. You can only know the environment that you live in, and some of the people who are lifelong residents there, you know, most of them don't have a care in the world, which also is concerning too. But the thing is that when you live in poverty like that, sometimes you don't even know that you're poor. Like, growing up, I didn't realize I was poor until, until I started going out to other neighborhoods, especially on the north side, and realizing, wow, these people got big old houses out here.
Yep. Yep.
And I think somebody had told me a interesting saying. It's like uh fish don't know what water is because they live in water all their life.
Correct. Correct. That's how it is. You don't know how poor you are because you've been poor until you meet other people. But hey, wait a minute.
Exactly.
And that's how. Yes, that's how it is, man. But it's gonna be interesting. I got a feeling we're gonna see some more interesting stuff happen here on the news. The way things are looking. Like I said, I've been avoiding the news like the plague for the past couple of months, but I'm starting to ramp back up just to start kind of watch what's going on because it's getting interesting. It's getting real interesting. So, any last words, my friend?
Well, like I said, stay vigilant, stay prayerful too. Please stay prayerful.
Yes. Yes. Well, y'all, I'm getting ready to go. It's getting late. What time is it? I didn't put my, oh, it's almost 12 o'clock. So it's almost 11 o'clock there. All right, Saints. Thank y'all for joining us. And hopefully, I will see y'all on Friday. Actually, the conversation I'm having on Friday, this is going to be a topic that was requested, and it's going to be the panel kind of driving it. I'm just going to be in the middle, kind of managing the conversation, but just I know that the title is a bit it's interesting, but I think the conversation is going to be even more interesting along with the title. So catch me on Friday. So all right, guys, you got any last words before we close out?
No, everybody be blessed.
All right, we'll see more Gardens. Steve bring Gardens on more Father G. All right, family. Thank y'all.